The sound of screaming metal seemed forever etched into her brain. No matter how hard she tried, it refused to be silenced. A constant reminder, as though she could ever forget. The terrible noise swirled around her head during the day and stalked her dreams. 6 weeks after the accident, it was as loud as the day it happened. The day she lost everything. Daisy Forrester fisted her hands, banging them hard against her stupid, useless legs. Why hadn't she been killed that day? She might as well have been. What use was she now? Not even her doctors could make it better. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Forrester. The damage to your spine may be too severe. Until the swelling goes down, Mrs. Forrester, we cannot tell whether you will regain the use of your legs. On and on and on they talked, trying to sound positive when all they meant was, well, yes, we know this sucks, but them's the breaks, deal with it. No, that wasn't fair. She'd received the best of care, including daily consultations with a counsellor, who was quite lovely, but in the end it was down to her. To fight or to give up was solely her responsibility. Her mind drifted back to that late February afternoon, the afternoon when for the first time in months she was happy. She had some exciting news and she was on holiday. They were motoring down to Cornwall, first break they'd shared in over 3 years. Micah, her husband, was often away. He flew all over the world attending conferences, but Daisy never accompanied him. He had dissuaded her, saying it was pointless. She would be bored, there'd be nothing to do while he was in sessions, and the hotels were miles from anything interesting. He stopped pretending his reasons were purely altruistic after she caught him in an affair following a convention the year after they were married. She had ranted and raved at him, demanding a divorce. He convinced her it was a mistake, just one of those things. At the time, she was gullible and trusting, so they made up, their fiery passion, as always, blurring her common sense. They stayed married, and he continued to attend conferences. She did not go with him, and he still had affairs. They no longer mentioned it. It was like an itch he had to scratch, and he always came home to her. He obviously felt guilty because he never failed to bring her an expensive, shame-induced gift. Daisy's best friend, Regan, the only person who knew, had told her countless times to kick him out, and maybe she was right. But Daisy loved Micah, faults and all. She had loved him since they first met 8 years ago, when she was 17 and he 21. He was the one who chased her, and she hadn't given in easily, wanting to be sure he was serious. He worked hard to convince her, and at the time she believed he wanted forever. When he was with her, he was considerate, loving, and attentive, and as far as she knew, he never played around close to home. The odd times Daisy forced herself to consider her situation dispassionately, she conceded she was being an idiot. Micah was a serial offender, but when push came to shove, Daisy could not bear the thought of seeing him with her replacement. And, affairs aside, she believed they were as content as most married couples she knew. The morning they set off on holiday, Daisy had received confirmation she was about 2 months pregnant. She suspected as much. 2 home tests were probably a reliable indicator, but she wasn't prepared to assume anything until her doctor verified her supposition. Although she and Micah hadn't talked about starting a family, they had been married 5 years and, as everyone insisted on telling her over and over again, her body clock was ticking. They had left home early, the roads weren't too busy, and they reached the borders of the Cotswolds just after midday. Following a tasty pub lunch, Micah took the wheel. They had only been back on the road about an hour when Daisy, who initially intended to wait until they arrived, could hold it in no longer. Excitedly, she shared her news, only to see Micah's face darken while the words spewing out of his mouth fractured her heart. "What the hell, Daisy? How could you do this to me? You know I hate kids. What makes you think I'd ever want some obnoxious brat hanging off me, puking all over, leaving its toys everywhere, making a mess?" Daisy gawked at him in shock. "Since when do you hate kids? You have a great time playing with your nephews," referring to his sister's 2 boys, who always dragged Micah into endless games whenever they visited. Micah never complained, throwing himself into the fun with enthusiasm.